Hello, everybody. How are all of you? We are here in CSGFlix episode 4, the UI. So this is a very large topic. So for those of you who don't know, just joining us, CSGFlix is I'm I'm building a entire streaming service from scratch, and this kind of came about because of some discussion. People were asking like, oh, how does some flicks work, and a few other streaming services that are out there, and I realized there was a lot of confusion. So I'm trying to tie together basically a lot of stuff this is really all public already, but it's kind of scattered all over the internet. So I think there's some value in putting it all together, and that is what we're doing right now. So for those of you who were here last time, we were ending on compression, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We have a bunch of code. There were a bunch of check-ins, and there's a bunch of code that is now available to all of you. So I will, that's basically, if you've been following along, that's all pretty much ready to go. So today we're going to be focusing on LRUD. So for those of you who don't know, LRUD is left, right, up, down. It's basically, on just about every kind of infrared remote that I could imagine or have seen, there's something that involves, left, right, up, down. There's some extra buttons depending on the kind of remote. So we're going to try to put ourselves in the remote control headspace. And the remote control headspace, this is typically like the TV kind of use case. There's a lot of stuff on UI in general. I'm not going to be going into all of that. Find a designer, highly recommend it. But this is really going to be more about kind of practical application of getting into that UI headspace and how we're going to slap together a quick UI based on LRUD for CSGFlix. So without further ado, I think let's get started. Okay, so for those of you who remember, that was actually the board that, hey, what's up, Lyle? How are you doing? The painful UI, yes. UI traditionally was very underappreciated. I had the opportunity of working, oh, and thanks for the follow, Lyle, I appreciate it, at some company that we're not going to mention. That gave me a coffee cup, and so that coffee cup company actually treats UI very differently than pretty much everywhere else that I'd ever worked. And I think that they were fairly instrumental in helping to revolutionize that and change kind of the perspective. UI it's hard work, and it's under-celebrated, and we're going to see some of that today. So I'm doing a much simpler version of than what that former coffee cup company did, and it is we're going to be looking at just single browser, sort of like the use case that we'd been dealing with before. So I've got the glove on, so we're going to do a little bit of whiteboard about all of these wonders. And for those of you who were checking out in the intro, that was a prom that I just recently, an Eeprom that I just recently programmed, and it has 32K of memory. So we're going to be blowing through 32K like nothing today. So, and yes, and sorry, to Lyle's point, LRUD is definitely a painful UI. There's very few keys, but I'm not focusing so much on LRUD itself. It is a difficult UI environment to program for, but it's really about relaxing. You're sitting back on the couch. This is one of the things when I was at that company I mentioned. I was really surprised when I joined, and they had a bunch of couches sitting near TVs, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. What is this? Like, well, I mean, if you're testing, you kind of got to get in the headspace. You got to be there. So we got to think like, we're used to our keyboards, our mice. These are for very complex movements that you can do. But there's really just a few buttons. I mean, a simple remote control can be emulated with just like a pack of a couple buttons and some wires. So we're going to be trying to get into that headspace for a little bit. So, right. Well, here we are. We're in CSGFlix, and we're doing episode 4. This is the UI. So welcome everybody. And today we're going to and to Lyle's question, what is an Eeprom? This is a very old chip, like for storing data, kind of in the firmwares were typically held on it. This one happens to have a Nintendo game that I'm making on it, but that's for a different show. I just thought it was a cool chip and gave the D20 a little bit of fun to work off. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. And by the way, I've got a little bit of lag here, so apologies if my answers are a little bit out from when you're asking. So, so we sort of ended last time, and we were talking about compression, and we focused on a bunch of different techniques, and this was back in episode 3, and that all worked fairly well. I can tell you that I went and checked all that in. So this stuff is now on GitHub, and I did a little bit of cleanup. So we're gonna go over some of the changes there. This is not terribly interesting code. So it's nothing logically or substantially changed from basically the last episode that you saw, but I did take the opportunity to kind of like, just mop up some of the dirty work that happens from live coding. So we're not worried about compression today. We've got our compression. So what are we worried about? We're worried about UIs. And when we're dealing with LRUD, we're in kind of this. Actually, let me go a bit bigger here. We're in this like T of doom. So we have left, right, up, and down. I guess you could call it URDL or I don't know. I like where they put the vowel for pronunciation. So these are the controls that we'll typically have on a remote that we can count on. There's usually some sort of enter button, and if we're very lucky, there's typically a back button. But we did have to deal with a bunch of remotes that didn't have that. Nowadays, we're going to be assuming that all of these buttons exist for our remote, and it's going to have a little IR beacon that's going to send out waves. All right, great. So how do we design knowing that this is basically the sum totality of all of the things that we can do? So this world is, I'm going to describe it as 5 or 6 button. Let's not be so gray and dark. I'm going to describe this as 5 or 6 buttons, and it's might have more. Well, let's see, maybe more. And it's certain types of interactions are going to be very difficult. So we're going to want to like minimize presses. So we want to cut down one of the key things that we're going to be trying to do is we're going to try to keep the number of buttons that have to be pressed in order to perform some action to an absolute minimum. This is a bit different from different types of UIs, which might be more text entry based, or they might assume keyboards or whatever. But we're going to assume that our keyboard really only has 5 or 6 buttons, and it's very simple. Okay, so we can add some metrics around that to try to see like how often people are pressing buttons, and we can try to minimize that, and that would be kind of happy land if we had it. Now, for a bunch of you today, I have something that I just want to let's do a quick little story time. So we have a quick tour of the sort of remotes that I was able to find while we were in my house that happen to be available, and I'm just going to pop those up on the screen here. So we're going to use our trusty GQ view, and this is kind of like a remote with a bit extra. This came from an Arduino kit. It's not that difficult a system. We got our left, right, up, down. They're sort of mapped all over the place. We have some of this stuff is not in a natural layout, but we do have numbers on here, so that presents an opportunity for maybe we could do something like predictive text or T9 type input. And we got a power button. So, but we're not going to be interacting. We're not going to use the power button as a feature. So then we kind of got to this era of keyboards that were infrared, I'm going to call them, and not to name names. Yeah, don't look down here, but I'm just obscuring that. But this has kind of your LRUD is sort of slapped right here in the middle. It's a nice thumb range. We still have the numbers that we'll be able to play around with. There's some TV controls that we're not going to directly interact with. And we have a back button. In this case, it's return or exit. A little bit confusing depending on what mode you're in on the TV. So these kind of change meaning. So this is a little bit tricky. And then we have some media buttons down here. Still kind of thinking this was sort of fresh out of the DVD era, as is my guess from the era of this particular remote. So that's fine. A nice stripped down image that I always like to look at is this is an older Apple TV remote. And here's your LRUD, and they're literally, you can see the buttons. So there's your 4 basic directional buttons and, your stop, and then we can use this for back, or we can use that for back. We have 6 buttons that we can rely on. Modern remotes are going to have a little bit more, and this one has a battery, obviously. This is kind of nice Apple design, very simplistic, just stripping it down to the basics. And that's kind of where things went afterwards, even on Samsung. So this is a more modern Samsung remote, and you can see this is the very clean sort of, here's our LRUD space. We got our back button kind of where we expect it. We've lost that dichotomy between back and exit, whatever that meant. There's some fast buttons here. So if your streaming service is really popular, then you could eventually get yourself onto one of these, and then it's all just one click. But it's all about trying to minimize button clicks. So yeah, that's all great. These all require infrared and a bunch of proprietary protocols. So we're going to be using one of my favorite LRUD remotes around. Now this is a sophisticated game controller, but I've managed to, for today's session, I've managed to knock all of the sophistication out of it. So we're going way under. This has some pretty advanced features like analog sticks, dual analog sticks. It has vibration. You have haptic feedback. You have a touchpad, which is effectively like having a mouse available. There's some shoulder buttons here. I'm not going to use any of that stuff. There's a PlayStation button. We're going to use the digital pad as our LRUD, and we're going to use the keys over here as kind of our back and our accept and back cancel type interactions. And funny story, these are typically reversed between the Japan and the US key maps. So in the Japanese version of this, like X meant like don't do something, like, sort of what you would think of with X, and circle meant do something. And in the US, that's flipped. So X typically means do something and circle means don't do something. But how we map the keys semantically, how we give them meaning, is something we're going to want to be configurable. So that's something we're going to have to pay attention to when we're kind of getting into our LRUD code. And it might have to change, even for the same controller, it might have to change for different regions. And then if we were really cool, I'm not even going to talk about this, but I think that, here's our LRUD, just in case we wanted to. Okay, all right. We're not going to play around too much with that, but coming soon. So, and yes, Sonny, that is from the manufacturer that you mentioned. Okay, so we have a little bit of insight into what this space looks like. These are a few kind of modern controls, and we're going to have to build something around that. Yeah, let me go through. So we're not going to go too much more. I mean, that's kind of the space that we're trying to get through today. So, still staying on our episode 4 stuff, we're going to try to, what's our plan? Well, we have a couple things that we need to do. So we kind of understand what world we're in of like, let's do less buttons, right? So let's try to optimize for kind of very simple remotes. Let's be relaxed. We're chilling. We're unwinded. We want to watch our streaming service, and we don't want to have a lot of UI to contend with. This is sort of like the couch use case that they had back at the former company. So how are we going to get there? Well, very quickly, I just want to go over some of the cleanups just so that there's some continuity with the last episode. I just want to show you where all that stuff went. That'll be very quick. So after that, we're going to say, let's take our Sony remote, which is a DualShock 4, and let's get input wired up. So this is a little bit challenging, but I'm going to borrow a trick from one of my earlier episodes. So if you want to see everything about that, I'm basically going to be taking code from the DIY Stream Deck, and that episode covered how to hook up custom inputs using the event input, so we can basically process inputs directly coming in. So we're not going to count on the operating system determining what's happening. We're going to look at scan codes directly. We're going to take our DS4 and we're going to take those scan codes through the UAPI, the user API for events, and we're going to turn that into keys for JavaScript. So we're going to be working in our same environment of single browser, and we can extend that out as we kind of get into more, as we want to do a better job supporting our product. So right after we get that done, I want to take as sort of a rich example, we're going to build a search keyboard, and the type that we're going to build is a linear keyboard. So I think this is about a reasonable amount of work that we can do in a live coding session. But there's this basically means that we're going to be building keys that kind of, this is like A, B, C, all of these buttons are going to be lined up, and right now this one is selected, and then I press right, and then this one is going to be selected. So this is kind of linear input. When the person presses, an actual key, then I want that to show up in a text blank. So the person types C, and then they can kind of move around. So this is one way of doing it. This keyboard arrangement is used in a bunch of popular UIs. It's on average, especially for something like the English alphabet, we've got 26 letters that we're going across. So if we assume probable distribution of characters, then we chop this in two, and there's an odds that you might have like up to 13 characters that you have to move in either direction, assuming you start from the middle. So this is a lot of key pressing. We can do better if we move that to an XY grid, and so this is why you sometimes see key layouts like this, where this might be A, B, C, and then D, E, and so on. And this allows us to kind of, if we're using up and down as well, then we're going to have a lot less keys on average, actually the log of this, basically. And so this is going to perform better. It's a little bit complicated to be doing on stream, but it's not much different from what we're going to be doing with the linear keyboard. So we'll kind of get to that. We'll talk a little bit about that, and we might save that for a future session. And then if we get to it, we can talk about doing better, which funny that I just mentioned that, because there are other designs available that can minimize key input, and you're going to come up with your own creative ones as well. So that's basically the plan. That's the headspace that we're going to be in for today. All right. Well, then let's start looking at it. Okay, so for those of you who saw in the intro, this is basically the overview from the first episode. So we're focused down here today. I got all of the code from the live sessions for these checked in. So we're gonna go take a look at that real quick. And then very exciting, the company that I may have mentioned before, I may have spoken to last week, and they may be interested in next week's episode. So we're going to be talking there a little bit about something that, well, we'll get to that next week. But basically, we're going to start moving out of the lab where, we have just ultra reliable, connections. The server is on the same machine as the client. Totally unrealistic. Let's start getting to like the real internet. So just a little tease for next week. It's going to be interesting. Okay, so where is that code? Well, hey, look at this, the CSGFlix repository. And I was checking in mostly, last night. I was trying to clean up a bunch of the stuff, and it should all be there from the different episodes, and basically exactly where I left that from the previous episode. I think I went with sort of one. Earlier on, I was going with one commit per episode. So if you want to see the code exactly at the end of episode 1, just check out here, 2, 3, so on. This is a bunch of the pre-work that I want to talk about right now. And this is basically just a kind of, nothing substantial really changed other than the things that I said I would do off stream after the last episode. So what is that? Well, here's those commits that we just mentioned. I just talked about well, let me get to that in a moment. All right, so git ignore, not very interesting. We're going to ignore the git ignore. The encoding, this code is all directly taken from what we were doing last time in the Flask server. So last time I had Flask, while we were coding, we wanted to see the results in the browser, but encoding, when we actually encode our movie, our video, our audio into a format that we're going to play back, we're using our pure JavaScript player, we don't do that live, unless we're doing the live case. So I said before, in the first version of this, we're going to be doing an ahead of time service. So this is where the video already exists. So this is something more like, the general YouTube case or the Netflix case, not like the Twitch case or some of the other live services. So those would be doing stuff on the fly, and they would be doing the encoding basically in the server. For our case, that's not what we're worried about. So what I did for all of you is I kind of broke that over here. I broke that out into 2 files, and that's this encoding. Basically, all of this is the stuff that was covered in the previous episode. So how to do RLE, how to do image, as images being stored as JSON, how to do deltas of, what changed from image to image. All of that stuff is still here, and it's pretty much exactly the same. The only real difference is this routine. And I told you that I was going to take those individual files. So before we were like JSON encoding a single image, and then like a delta, and then maybe an audio file, and they were separate files. So all this does is it really just kind of packs it all together into one file. So you can read about this later. I added a little bit of a metadata header. So let me just blow this up, just so that we could see like what the height and the width were, and the bit depth, and what format we're using. I left a bunch of to-dos in here, so I didn't want to go too far not doing live coding, but really this was just about building a concatenated file that has all of the, it has the initial, so for each file, it's a 30-second chunk of video. It's got an initial image, and then it's got an array of deltas, so what changes from image to image. And that's stored in this deltas array. And it puts the audio into here, and I didn't get around to time text or seeking images, but we'll get to that probably in the future. Okay, so you do all that, and you end up with this beautiful stuff that I'm going to show you. So this is all checked in. So this is the same repository. So if we go, well, here, let me just start up screen. So if we go into the encoding, this part over here, this is the file that we're looking at. If we run this, there's this fetch corpus, and this will just, I took all of the videos and I just threw them on my website so that you could follow along if you were interested. And this just downloads them and then chops them up exactly the way that we covered in the show. So all of that is there. It's not not something we really need to worry. Watch that episode if you're really interested about how that works. Okay, so when you do chop them all up, then you'll get like, here's like all of the images in the first 30-second movie, you know, so we can look at each one individually, just unrolled. And then if you pack them all together, you get this encoded version, which has 2 files for each of these. There's the actual video audio file that I just kind of walked you through. So we can take a look at one of those. And this, again, this just has, you know, a little bit of metadata, and then here's the image, you know, and this is run length encoded. So this is 9,495 zeros and then 337s, but it's just RGB data when you undo it, exactly as it was in the last episode. And then the deltas are a little bit further down. And then we're going to need some box art today. If we're going to build a UI, we need some imagery. Box art itself is actually a really complicated field. So I just took the first frame of every video for now. So again, that's something that we can do better. Okay, so that basically covers the fetch. That's the other cleanups, and I pulled the stuff out of the live server, so we're gonna have very little that's left over in the server, other than it just loads the encoded file in a very uninteresting way. And I caught a bug that somebody brought up. I was using I as a loop counter. It really should have been J. So that's I think it was Stupak who mentioned that. But basically, that's why it was cutting off the image in the previous episode. It was going to the wrong end. So I just fixed that, and I added this, which we're going to get to a little bit later. And this is really just the same stuff. I just moved play audio out. So anyway, bunch of cleanups, but basically exactly the same code. And this thing, which basically just plays it so that before we had all separate fetches for each of these, now it's all just done in one. Okay, great. You can watch the video episode and the compression episode if you want to see how that works. But so that's basically all of our cleanup. Well, great. Then let's get to the new stuff. So let's take our trusty LRUD remote, which I have plugged in just using USB connection, and it shows up as just a regular joystick game controller that we can play with. All right, so now I'm going to be taking some of these encoded files when we kind of get to that stuff a little bit later. All right, so, well, how are we going to get input from this thing? I did mention that I borrowed the code from the DIY Stream Deck. This is the key handler that I built in episode 2, and yeah, see, it's all right there from the show. The only real difference here is that instead of using the Dell keyboard, I mapped it to the Sony, and what this does when I run it is it takes the buttons, which I decoded, you know, this is just borrowing some code from Linux. It takes the buttons and it turns them into like a left keystroke, like a left arrow, a right arrow, an up arrow, and a down arrow. So this is my key map. And again, here we've got cross map to B, A, X, Y. You might notice that from a earlier generation controller, which had a 4-button layout. Not going to say which one. But anyway, so you might recognize that. And then what it does is it just sends the key, you know, it just injects the key input directly. So let me show you that so that we, you know, can kind of see what we're doing. I dropped that into the remote control repo. And this file here, the DS4 handler, has that. These support files, this is just mapping, you know, the actual event name from Linux to, you know, what it is. So let's see what we get when we, and this requires no libraries, by the way. It's just reading the input directly. So I'm on here and I press up and I get an up arrow. I press down, left, right, and I can press my circle, which is mapped to A, which we see over here. And, you know, I've got my different B, you know, all this stuff. And then there's unmapped keys, for example, these shoulder buttons that we're not using today. And I just left them in their sort of raw button name format. So we're not going to worry about that. We're not going to worry about the sticks, but we are going to be focused on these keys. Now, since these keys are mapped, it means that they're just regular keys now, like on my keyboard. But so if I press up here, I'm going to scroll up. If I press down, and not that left and right have much meaning on this GitHub page, but anyway, so that's cool. Learn how to hook a controller up and all right there. Great. Well, let's get to, all right, so we know how to take input. Now, we're going to need that to show up in JavaScript because this, despite the fact that the key input is happening, we need it to happen on a web page. So chat, how do we do that? We're going to watch for key events. So, all right, let's go back. Now, again, like I told you, I've stripped almost everything out of here. All of that stuff that was related to encoding, that's been moved over to the encoding file. All right, so we're pretty much safe to work with this. This is in the player. So this is just, I'm using Flask. This is just simple web server so that we can, see things coming in. I added a very simple CDN. So this is just, this is going to be our mock CDN for today. So the encoded files that I did earlier and I showed you earlier, they just get accessed if we just go here. So, well, let's see it. So we run this thing. Yeah. Okay. And now we've got the web page that we left from the last session. Okay. So this was our video player. And this is our Delta. This was our off-screen service that we were using to build frames. So for those of you who didn't see it, pure JavaScript video codec decoding from JSON. This is this.
I'm going to talk about, well, compression really falls into two major
and
categories.
something kind of cool.
That
this has the audio kind of muxed
that you
in,
can use, a very
but
large field.
this is showing you
really
the delta
broadly
from the previous picture. So you can see as I'm writing in the video frame.
And techniques that are lost.
So
what's the difference between these two?
I thought that was kind of a cool effect.
Reproduces exactly whatever you can.
Anyway, you can check that on your own. So I didn't add a stop, so I'm just going to reload the page. All right. So we're back to kind of a working state from sort of where we were previously. All right. Well, so for today, we're not going to touch this player page. This was the this is actually the player, so I'm gonna call this play. I'm gonna remap it. So right now there should be no handler on default, and if I go into play, I've now got my stuff over there. So let's rename our function to, because we're good people. All right, so now we're going to build our UI. So let's make that our home page. And for now, let's just return nothing at all, which is something. All right. So if I go here, we're going to come back to playback in a little bit. This is all about UI and selecting the content. So our mission is to take these control inputs that we have from this LRUD, this advanced LRUD controller, and get them to select something that we can go and play back. The whole point of streaming video is that you want to be playing video. If you're not playing video, I don't know what service you're building, but that's not a streaming service. Okay. So we have our something. So let's just put this into a template file that we can operate on. So we're going to call this our UI file. And I'm just going to label this as our server, move it over here. And let's, for our UI file, let's, so that has to go in the templates directory. Let's read in the existing starting point that we had, which was, this is just basically a kind of skeleton layout. I don't actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, this is actually a lot of stuff. So let's not do that. Okay, we're gonna build a bare bones web page. So let's just start here and get going. Now, just to be kind of naughty. I'm going to be styling sort of on the elements directly. So, I mean, you wouldn't do this in a real production app, but it is something that I think it's okay for, you know, our session today. You would want to clean this up. So let's get started here. So if we're in the right place, then now we're getting this template file showing up over here. So we're going to need, for our particular case, I want to start with kind of the key input. So let's get straight into JavaScript, and we're going to add a global key down handler. Now, you wouldn't normally want to use key down. You'd want to use something like input. I just for the people who are very worried about this, you know, you would want to process input events rather than keys directly. Since I want to focus on a remote control and I want to handle my own button mapping, I am going to take the keys directly. But just in case you're interested, I'm going to drop that in chat. MDN has a great set of articles on it. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take a, we're just going to attach straight to window. We're going to say add an event listener, and we want to take keys. So we're only going to process key down. So this is not how you would read a normal keyboard, but it is how you would read one of these things possibly. And I'm just gonna actually let's just make a quick little stub function, which is going to be called handle key. And the only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop that on console. So let's make sure that when we accept a key event, we see that key event showing up. So let's just make sure that we have this wired up correctly. So I've got my handle key function accepting key downs if everything is kind of right. And if I jump over here, then I should be typing. So if I'm typing on the keyboard, I'm getting keyboard events. And if I'm typing on my controller, I am getting controller events. Okay, so it's just showing up as normal keys at this point. You would have to build, like I did in that other thing, you'd have to build a custom key map depending on what kind of IR control you've got. Okay, so events get through. The whole point of UI is we need to do something with those events. We need to give the user a rich experience. So we want to give the user what they're looking for. All right, that's kind of what we're doing. We want to do it in a minimum of keystrokes. And Primogen, yeah, sure, go ahead, ask a quick off-topic question. I'm gonna take a drink of coffee while you type that up. While he's typing that, I'm just gonna do. As Lyle pointed out, he just did ask a question by asking if he could ask a question. Okay, so I am going to, I'm just gonna, oh, how far on the green, yellow, red range does your microphone go? I noticed that you are disproportionately quieter than most streams. I would say that I'm just touching the yellow range, except for when I get excited, and then it spikes into red. So I'm guessing I should probably bring up my general volume. Is that, what? Let me know what you all think of this. Is this better? Okay, yeah, I'll kind of stay up here. So we'll play with the gain a little bit more later if it's really bad. But I think in general I've got my volume a little too low. I know it's not the mic; it's a good mic. Yeah, that makes sense, Lyle. And so we have a few people from that former company hanging out today. I'm not going to name names, but they were both around when this logo might have been the thing. Okay, so, and it's really funny that we have two heavyweights from UI hanging out today. So, no pressure, guy. No, it's cool. These guys are great, by the way. Okay, so we have a with our new one on iOS. I think he called you. No, I did not do that, Primogen. Absolutely not. That would be the pot calling the kettle black if Lyle was. But all right, so Prime is such a Python fan. I know Spartan Grader. I know he loves when I'm gonna do more Python for him. But all right, let's get to the fun stuff. Okay, so he likes Python about as much as he likes Rust. So we can. All right. So great. What do we want to do now that we know that input's coming in? Well, we're going to build a, let's see, looking at the plan here, our keys are showing up. So we need to be able to turn these for our simple UI. We're basically just going to be going for a search blank. And like I said, we're going to go for linear. So we want something that goes left to right, which is just a single locale, single country, single, and we're going to get to all that magic later about how to do a better job. Okay, so the example that I kind of have is I want to basically build a bunch of buttons. So if we wanted to do this sort of the boring way, now I'm just going to give myself a div here as kind of my search area. I mean, this is where we're going to be kind of doing our action. So I'm going to call this the search keyboard. And our goal is going to be to just build in here like, button A, B, C, D, this button A, that kind of thing. And do that for B, and this is going to get really dull if we do it all by hand and forget about when we get to other countries, because that's going to be a lot of fun. So we're doing a letter-based UI for today. I'm not going to get into more complicated input methods, so we're going to assume an alphabet. But yeah, let's wire that up. So the kind of gist of this is I want something that's going to iterate and create a button for every single letter. So I'm gonna call this the add a search keyboard, and we're just gonna be doing one language for now, but we want to start basically from the letter A, and we want to go all the way to the letter Z, and we want to get a button for each of these. So first we're going to need to capture that search keyboard element. So I'm just gonna grab that off the DOM, and then we need to know sort of what our range is going to be. So I want to go from, let's call this the start letter as going to be A, but we're going to take the character code. So just in case, I know that the heavyweights that are hanging out here know this, but we want to be operating sort of on the numeric representation. And I'm not too worried about Unicode at the moment. So in this case, ASCII aligns with ISO 8859, aligns with UTF-8 in the lower code plane. So we're going to take the first character code, and we're going to take the last character code. And this is, so that's kind of our range. And basically for every one of those, I'll try to be a little better with my JavaScript now that I know these serious people are here. I'm going to kind of start from start letter, and I'm going to go until we reach the end letter. I'm going to use a let because I'm being like that. And we're going to just go by one. So if I just dump this out, it's not terribly complicated yet. If I just dump out, so this is just going to be the numeric representation. So if I do that and I remember to call my function, then I should see 26 entries here, which corresponds to those character codes. Well, how do we go back from that character code to the actual letter? Well, we just go from that character code, say 122, and it'll tell me that that's Z. All right, great. So I can turn these back into letters by just using that convenience function without having to write it. There are nice effects of writing in JavaScript. I know that they're loving hearing me say that too, but Primogen, don't you dare clip that. Okay, so if I look now on console, I've got my A to Z, and now it's just a matter of kind of laying those all out into buttons. So I'm going to do that the quick and dirty way. So I'm going to say that my button is I'm just going to create an element, and I'm just going to make a button for each of these. And for that button, I'm going to need a way to refer to it, because when I'm actually LRUDing, I'm going to need to like change which button is selected. So let's give them all, something like that. So for right now, I'll start by just labeling the buttons. I'm going to hit the inner HTML property because I'm not too worried about the efficiency right now. And I'm just going to set it to the letter. And if I take that letter and I throw it on, I'll add a quick on click. So if you just happen to click this thing, then let's just bind it to console log pressed the letter here. Okay, so if we actually click that thing, and then we just need to make sure that that shows up on the screen because we need to add it to our search keyboard. So our search keyboard, and we're just going to add on the element that we just created, append child of the button. Then that should throw a bunch of buttons on the screen. And it does. Look at that. No, we're not doing WASM and Rust in the browser right now. Spartan Creator. I made the mistake of mentioning WASM in an earlier stream, and I got a lot of people going, no, don't do C in the browser. So anyway, great. We have these things, and we bound them to events so we can see what we're pressing. So we're pressing, this kind of thing. The one minor little bug here is, this needs an object. Come on, guy. That's what. Okay, so we pressed K, we pressed R. Wonderful. All right, so we know how to add for any language. All we need to do, any language that has an alphabet, we just need a start letter and an end letter, and this is pretty much going to work. All right, so there's our world. WASM, if you don't use Emscripten, yeah, you definitely want to use Emscripten or ECMAScripten. Interesting. So great. Now I'm going to give all of these IDs because I didn't give them IDs, and we're going to call them the key plus the name. So I want to just see, I just want to check that real quick. So if I go and I look at this, oops, sorry. So if I go and I look at my search keyboard here, so now I've got key A, B, C. So I have an ID for each of these elements. All right, cool. That gives me a way to select one as we're moving. So basically from there, we just need to take these key events, which if I'm pressing up, these show up as keyboard events. And I get this key. So this is, there's a data structure here that all sorts of fun stuff in it, but we're really just going to be worried about the key that's pressed. So I'm going to decode this. So for the WASD fans, we could do our mapping with WASD, except then the A is already being used. So great. I have my search keyboard. I'm just going to leave that down here with his friend. So when I actually take the event, I'm not really interested in the event directly. I just want to see what the key is that was pressed. So I press these keys and I'm saying, okay, there's my arrow left or right. Now I was doing that on the keyboard, but I can do it here as well. I can even do my up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right. Oh, okay. Getting a little carried away. So it's really cool when you have a controller hooked up to your computer. All right. So we need to wire that up to get this going. Now, we need to have a sense of which of these is going to be selected. And we're going to need a visual indicator to say like, okay, this is the one that you're on. And just because this might get compressed a little bit in the stream, I'm just going to blow this up a little bit so that it's easier to see. There's what we kind of need to do with this is we need to select, we need to say that like, we need a little bit of state. We have to say like, okay, which of these is selected? So I'm just going to say last selected is, and I just want this, and I want to be clear that that's a letter, because now I've got an ID and I've got a letter. So I want, like, you know, if A is selected, I'll just say like this is A. But I'm going to start it off unselected, and we're going to add a little function that's going to change which one of these is selected. So I'm going to set the selected character for a given letter, and what I want this to do is basically, if I say set selected B, then I want B to kind of light up in some fashion. So let's do a little bit of detective work on that. So the element that we're going to want, we know that they're all composed of the word key plus the letter. So if I do a element by ID, don't worry about the race condition, Lyle, then, and I say that this is going to be key plus whatever key letter was passed along, and I'm going to be unsafe about it because this is not production code, it's live code. And this is going to be the next selected. So, well, it's going to be like the current selected. Naming is hard. Next select. Let's just call it next selected. Next selected button. So we know that that is a button, and we know that if last selected is null, then it's not on anything. So let's just say if it's not null, then we could do something with it. So we'll get to that in a moment. But if we're down here, we're going to take our next selected. So in the case that we're in the first time we call this, nothing is selected. So we just want to select, say, like, you know, A. If I call like set selected A, then we want something to light up here. So for today, because we don't have a UI spec, we're going to just say, like, take this thing and do a little styling, set the background color to red. All right, so this will, all right, and then if we go and we call this thing, yeah, okay, so that's on B, that's on D, that's on P. Okay, so this kind of works. Now, what I want to do is, if something was selected, I want to deselect it. So let's take whatever letter was selected, which I'm going to refer to here as the last selected button. And I'm not going to take the key letter. I'm going to take the last selected letter. And I'm going to, just in case that kind of cut off there. So that's basically what I'm doing, is I'm just looking for the ID of whatever the last selected letter was. And that one, I want to turn it back to kind of this neutral gray, which turns out it has a CSS name that I had to go look up, but that's going to be last selected button dot style dot background color. It's called button face, is the default button face. And then all we have to do is, after we select our new one, we just have to update last selected letter. So last selected letter gets key letter. And I'm not concerned at all that that's a global. All right, so if I go here and I select P and then I select C, all right, so now I'm getting my last one is sort of disappearing. So that's cool. That means for our initialization, we can just do a quick call on that and say we add the search keyboard, and then we can set selected to A. So now when we init, we're going to get the first one always selected. Great. No, you're fine, Nightshade dude. You're not late to the party. It's we just kind of went on the overview and like what we're going to do. And we now have a very basic linear keyboard, which we're going to use for searching. So linear in the sense that it's laid out in a line, in the line sense of linear. And so what we need to do now, what you did miss though, is that I did check in the code, which takes the key map for this, and it causes JavaScript events to fire with the keys. So if I do my left, right, up, down, then, you know, I get all that stuff. Okay, So now I've got my initial setup selected. So we're pretty much like good to get going on functionality. So we have a way to select. What we really want to do is we want to move. I'm just going to keep this really simple. So we're just going to move left and right. We're going to ignore the other keystrokes. So when I do press a left, I get an event for arrow left. So let's process that. So if event.key is arrow left, then move it left. But let's move to the left. Let's just make sure that I got nothing funky in my logic here. So if I press arrow left, yeah, okay, it tells me that I'm going to move to the left. All right, so we're going to be unsafe, and we're going to let you scroll off the keyboard because that's how we roll with live code. So basically what I need to calculate is what is the next letter. So the next letter is going to be, let's be explicit about what it is. So the next key letter is going to be the last selected letter. And we need to basically take that and subtract 1 from it. I don't think you can do that directly. Yeah, it's not enough. You actually have to go and like take this thing and to char code it. No, sorry. Yeah, char code add. So we need to turn this into a number. So last selected letter. Now safety check would be if it's not null, but we're not worried about safety. I want to try to keep things simple for the stream. This is not production code. So, but you knew that if you tuned into any of the episodes. Needs more Rust for safety. No Nightshade, dude. Okay, so last selected letter, let's do that, and let's just do char code at. So that'll give us a number. We're going to subtract 1 from it, and then we're going to turn that back into from char code. We're going to turn that back into a letter. So I'm just going to line break this, and that should be our next letter, assuming that we don't go past A. But we'll worry about safety in a moment. We could just add to this condition, so don't do it if it's A. All right, so that should be our next letter. And let's just see what we calculated to make sure that that worked. And if I, well, yeah. Okay, that is the character that's left of A. So just to kind of show you, if this was B was the initial one, then yeah, okay, I get A, which is cool. So we want this to be A. Great, that's our pattern. So now we basically just have to say set selected to next key letter. I know that's not safe. And let's do the same thing if it was a right. The only real difference here is that this is now going to be, we're going up letters instead of down letters. So if I do that, oh, there we go. There's linear traversal on our keyboard. So, and we can go left, we can go right. All right, we're putting ourselves into the UI headspace of something for a TV. Okay. Cavalry tactics. I agree. Rust or bust. No way. Guy, you should do. Yeah. Okay. Primogen. I'll get to it. I know. I'm working on the first feature right now, but this was a bit of work. You can go look at the repo if you want to see specifically what. But okay. So we have a way of moving with just using LRUD. Okay. Now we need a way of entering. So if we go and we press, and in this case, I'm going to take the X as sort of the enter. So I would move this around, and if I wanted to get to like R for Rustin, then I would press X here, which is mapped to a B. Now, I'm using those key codes from a controller that once named these letters. So great. Else if, now again, you would turn this probably into a dictionary associative array, whatever your language wants to call it. So if this is a, so in this case, pressing X is a B. So if this is a B, then we want to take whatever the current letter is and enter it. So for now, I'm just going to drop that entered letter, whatever the current one is, which is, that's the one that it's sitting on right now. Okay, so if I do that and I press X, yeah, okay, so that's entering letter A. If I move it over to G, then I'm entering a G. All right. Now we need somewhere for that to go that's not the console. So let's just add a quick little search blank, which is going to show our user like what what they're typing, because it's a process. So I kind of took a, I'm thinking that I'm just going to use a text area for this. So I don't want to be able to type in it. So this is going to be disabled. And I'm going to call this the type area. It's typing. This is where you're typing. So here, and I'm just going to do that. And let's just take a quick look at what this looks like. Okay, so let's roll that to the next line the old-fashioned way. And that all gets done, and I'm just going to pull this out to like here. So if you wanted to do real CSS, you should really go find Tyler, who occasionally comes by. So I'm not going to steal his jazz, but so this is width of 586. So I'm just going to throw a quick style on there to say that the width of this thing should be 586 pixels. Okay, so this shows up and it's the right size. If I scroll it down, then yeah, okay, we're good. Cool. So now I have an entry area where we can show the keys after they get typed, and then we're going to use that value later. That'll be our state for submitting our search query. So it's an object in JavaScript. Dictionaries are for C# and dicts use pi. Okay, thank you, Primogen. It's like it's not easy. Kind of like making a streaming TV service is a lot of work. Yes, Lyle, you are absolutely right. And thank you, Primogen, for your contribution. I do appreciate it. Great. So right now we're just going to start this off here, but the person didn't necessarily press that, and we're dropping that on console. So let's not drop it on console. Let's do that as a let's build a function. Like if you selected. So you're on a selected key, and if you pressed it, then let's do something for that. So we're going to say the selected key is pressed. Okay, so it should have no state associated because we're pulling it off the global state for this keyboard, and we need this function. So let's just whip up a quick function. So the selected key is pressed is going to use the location of last selected letter, and it basically just needs to tack that on to the actually, you know what, I'm going to close this. I'm just going to split this. It needs to tack that onto the text area that we just added. So we're going to get that by saying what do we call it? The typing. Okay, so the typing is going to get the let's get it by ID of, it's called typing. And we're just going to change the value of it. We're going to say take the value of it and add on the currently selected letter. So if we do that, we move along here, and we generate that key. Okay. Oh no, I typed the wrong thing. How do I go back? let's add a delete. So backspace key pressed. We're gonna map backspace to that circle, but you know, again, your key map could handle that for you so that you can get your region versions of this kind of fine. So in this case, it's not B. I think that we get a. Yeah, okay, it's A. So this is going to be backspace key pressed, and we just need to delete something. So let's just make sure we wired that right. So I'm going to hit this, delete it. Okay, cool. So we just need to manipulate this value here. So let's grab that element again, and let's do a little text JavaScript processing. So that's fun. I'm going to use the slice operator to do this. So like if I have a string that's like ABC, and I have a slice function attached to it, and it just takes a start and an end. So if I say go all the way to the almost last entry, and I know that the people in here would probably know a better way to do this, including Primogen and Lyle. But so if I slice this to 2, then I end up with AB, which is cool. So if I slice it. So basically what I want to do is I want to take this string, the length of it, and subtract 1. Okay, so that's my trick right there. So I'm going to do typing.value.slice, and we're going to go from 0 to however long the string is minus 1. So typing.value.length minus 1. Okay, I'm going to need to watch, if I don't have, there has to be enough characters in there. So as long as the length is greater than 0, then chop something off. So we're gonna take off the last character. All right, so if we hit backspace, nothing happens because there's nothing in there. And if I start typing Oh, no, not calling our backspace pressed. So yeah, that's, oh, I didn't reload the thing. Huh. Yeah, okay, so I've got my backspace key, and typing is here. And if the length is that, let's just do some printf style debugging. Hit here. So, okay, so there it doesn't. Yeah, okay, so it's hitting it. So, oh, I didn't assign it. Typing value gets that. Okay, so, right, okay. Now, this typing value, so when I press A, yeah, okay. So if I'm pressing A, then that works. And I can check that I got that map right. Yeah, I'm pressing circle and I'm deleting. Okay, so I'm pressing this, and I'm deleting. All right, now I can edit. I can say fire. Now you see why you want that grid instead of a line. Fire. Oh, no, wrong thing. Okay, we can clean up our input. Okay, great. Now, a normal search would do this as sort of like a, a fetch, XHR, however, request basically on each keystroke. I don't want to add that complexity today. So instead, I'm just going to take another button as sort of our submit. So I'm going to use this square key. So when you press, actually, let's take triangle. All right, so when you press triangle, it's going to send off the search query. Oh, Lyle says, the problem with LRUD is that even when you make the keyboard work, your users will hate it. Yes, it is. It's a challenging problem to make a UI with this few buttons. I mean, and that's why we're going to talk a little bit later about how we can do better. Okay, so basically I've got my keyboard wired up, I've got my value, and I just need to have one last piece here, which is I just need to be able to submit the entry. But you wouldn't do that normally. I mean, you just submit on each keystroke, I guess. Or, you could debounce it, let the user type a bunch of things, and then submit the debounce version. I don't want to get too complicated today, so let's... Actually, you know what? We don't even... Yeah. We can just submit it every keystroke. Yeah, let's keep it simple. So basically, every time a selected key is pressed, we're going to fire off a query, which is going to be do search. So I'm going to need a do search routine. And this is going to take the state of this. So, and it's just going to say, I'm just going to log for the moment. I'll say doing, or it has its own verb, doesn't it? Searching on, and it's going to be typing value. Okay, so I do this, and now when I move around and I press the equivalent of the X key, it is now going to call search on every query. So, and if I delete it and I just go and I say fire, okay, so if we start spelling that out, then we're going to get a search as the user's going. So we're getting, then we can do completion. Great. Now all we need are some search results. So, like I told you before, we have I set up a bunch of movies, which are basically, it's just clips from this series. So that'll be our catalog. So we know that we have those available. They're encoded in CSGFlix format, and we can, we basically want to wire those up. So we want our search results to show up sort of in this window here. And when the user hits one of those, we want to play it. Yeah, coffee with the crew. Hey, what's up, coffee with the crew? I am going to take a sip of coffee. Okay. Wonderful. Well, let's so this is our do search. We need to wire up a search endpoint. So let's just this is our DS4 handler. So this is basically what's handling our keyboard input. This is the encoded files. So let's open another. I'll just split this window. So this is our endpoints. So let's add a search endpoint, which is going to be called search. And for our search logic, it's not going to be HTML. I'm just going to return JSON directly. So this is, I need to use response to do this. Let me see if I just got my Flask stuff right. But if we do response of JSON, let's build a, let's pretend the search result is Firefly. The copyright. Let's say that the search result is CSGFlix. And that actually search results would be ordered. So let's treat these as a dictionary, and because we are in Python now, and let's just do the dumps of this, and we'll specify that the MIME type is text JSON. So this should make our, look at me doing JavaScript. This should make our JavaScript happy with the search results. So if I go and do B, okay, so I have a search endpoint. Let's just see what we get when we hit search. Okay, so we're getting back CSGFlix, and it's just normal JSON. We'll say this is CSGFlix E1, and this is CSGFlix E7. Okay, yeah, okay. So this works kind of the way we think it should. All right. In JavaScript, we need to actually handle that result. We need to fire it off and get that result. So I'm just going to use fetch for that. So with our fetch stuff, I just need to basically just specify that this endpoint, I'm going to use a relative syntax on it. And we're going to need to pass along our query, which we're going to need to URL encode if we go that way. Well, we're not going to worry about spaces for the moment, so we're just going to add it. And by the way, chat, yeah, remind me what the how do we stringify that? So I'm going to take my query and I'm going to take whatever the value of typing is, which needs to be encode URI component. Thank you, Sunny. So encode URI component. This is, yeah. You just need whatever you're going to pass along. So we'll just tack that on there and we should be good. All right, so we fetch the thing and then we want to JSON parse it, right? You know, we're gonna. I'll do it this style. So we want to basically process that when it comes back, and then let's just dump that on console to make sure that we got the right results back. So this should be the object form, and we're good to go. So if we come here, yeah, okay, so we're getting back some stuff. I go here and I do that. That's neat. Now, if I look in my log, Sunny's absolutely right, because that is going to do the things that we expect it to do. All right, great. So we just need to pull this entry off and we're good to go. If I want to cheat, yeah, you know what? Let's do this the easy way. I'm just going to make this a search path because we could just do this. I don't really want to process the variable. Don't type slash. Okay, and then here I can come along and say that this is the search query. So that's cool because then I can say, look at the search query, and if we come here and we do B, and let me get rid of this, then yeah, it's showing up. It's showing up here. It's all processed. Now, I would need to undo it. Oops. I would need to undo this, this URI. Stop that. Wrong screen. Okay, I would need to undo that with, it's in URL lib, right? Parse URL unquote A plus B. Yeah, and let's use unquote plus. Hey, stop that. Unquote plus. Yeah, okay. So this will be. I think that's how it's going to come from JavaScript. I'm just going to slap a space in there real quick to make sure that I've got the right encoding. But we need to do this and pass along a plus. Well, actually, let me just add it to the value here. See what our URI component does with it. So when I hit this, it shows up on my server. Okay, it's using %20. Okay, so, oh, nice. It's already decoded for me. I don't need to do anything with it. Nice. All right. So, great. So we basically just need to take this thing and do some sort of search. So I'm not gonna search theory. That's a whole other topic. So I think for today, I've prepared a file for all of us to use, which is I call the catalog. And so basically these are our encoded stuff, but we don't have any metadata in here that's associating these things. So like this is the movie file and this is the box art, Where's the title? It's not there. So to save us a little bit of time, I have created a catalog, which I'm just going to drop in this. Oh, that's not the directory I want to be in, is it? In this directory. So let's take this and copy in our catalog. Oh, look at that. There's our catalog. Okay, so this is all. I just wrote some quick metadata for all of the movies that are in here. I'm just going to return. Well, we'll start off just by returning the first one, but they're going to have. It's going to have a form sort of like this. So in this case, I'm using a dictionary because this is. I'm going to enforce the fact that there's only one movie ID for each title. That may or may not be the case on your streaming service. But in there, I'm going to get back some nice data. So let's basically let's take like this one and say that those are the search results. We could actually scan through and start building a search engine, but later. Okay, so we're just going to open up the catalog file that I just added, and we're going to process it. So we're going to load that, and this is going to be our catalog. And I'm going to say that our results, which is just going to be a array, I'm going to say result.append catalog. I can't subscript this thing, can I? Yeah, because it's a dictionary. So I need to say catalog.keys, C keys. All right, there's our catalog keys. And I'm going to say catalog sub C keys sub 0. All right, so that's the first one. And I'll do that sub 3. So if we do that, and we get a nice little error because that's life. Dict keys is not subscriptable. Okay, so I thought I took the keys of that. Huh. Yeah, so here I'm saying this is dict. Oh, because it's wrapping it. Come on. You gotta be like that, don't you? Turn into a list. Yeah, okay, so now I get out the keys in the right order. So so I just returned from my movie list, I returned basically the data for this, and I returned the data for this. Sorry, the one after it, the data, it's entry 3, which would be this. Okay, so we look here and we see that this is movie 2 and this is movie 5. Okay, so those are our search results. We don't have to worry about that because UI is not concerned with how the backend comes up with data. You have a search team that does that. Okay, we can do an episode on search if everybody's really interested in it. But I think that's a pretty well worn topic. It's not really directly related to streaming, so it's basically the same techniques are going to apply. But the key difference is that you have to keep in mind that you're on a LRUD type constrained device where it's not like easy to type. So we have to assume that like we want to try to guess the titles as soon as possible, like probably organize as a try, you know, and kind of do it that way. All right, so great. I don't need to print this out anymore. I could even return random entries if we wanted to, but let's not do that. So although in Python that's really easy. No, okay, all right. Let's do the thing, then we'll worry about playing with the thing. Okay, so we're not getting started anymore. We're going to say this is CSGFlix episode 4 UI. So this is going to be our UI. Well, this is going to be, it's not called episode 4. This is the CSGFlix UI. Yay, okay. Because this is a big deal, we're going to make it a big deal in an H1 tag. All right, great. So now it's serious. Now we got a real product. All right. See, pressing these does nothing because we're in LRUD world. And so we can say cool. We're going to go and build a GUI. Okay. It doesn't matter really what we're searching for because our job as UI engineers today is to show these results. So we're getting back this stuff. So we're going to need an area to display it in. All right, well, how do we do that? We need to, well, I mean, first we need an area for, you know, to put the results. So right now, this is all kind of my search keyboard. I'm just going to separate that so you can see it easier. This is my search keyboard that we just built, but we need a place to actually show the search results. So I'm going to say this is the search results part. And we are going to basically add, I mean, this could be a table, whatever. I'm just going to append the entries one at a time, kind of the same way that I did the keys earlier. Yes, thank you, Lyle. I will blink. I will drink coffee too. All right, so let's put some search results. So results go here. All right. Okay, so this is our area. Let's just make this, just add a little bit of minimal styling. I'm gonna make this area black. So this is a, just throw a quick style on here and say that the background color is black. Okay, now we need to give it some size stuff. So let's give it a width of the same width, and let's give it a height. Now, from our previous episode, our height was 240 on our image frame. So I'm just going to make that 250 to give us a little, well, let's make it 260 to give us a little bit of room to kind of operate here. Now, because it's a div, this thing should lose all of its, well, okay, we're good. So this is here, and we're good to go. So Fafi's asking, why is your JS on the HTML and not in a separate file? Fafi, just because I think it's faster for live stream. I mean, this is obviously not how you code, and I mean, this is a no-no, right? But I'm just kind of tucking it here for the live coding part. I mean, I'll do cleanup like kind of off stream because I think, you know, less gymnastics to kind of jump between files. Yeah, no, not because it's a good idea. You should not do that. But okay, so we have this thing here, and we basically need to create blocks for our images. So I'm just gonna make each of these its own. We're gonna let the DOM do some of the work there for us, and we're not gonna get into doing the fancy transitions and all the other UI magic that you would do. But here we've kind of gotten back our search results. So we want to basically, we need a way to take one of these entries. So in this case, like this one, and we want a function that basically turns this into a block based on this data. So let's do that. Let's make another function here, which we're going to call add search item, add search cell. Okay, and that's going to take a results entry. Okay, so one of the entries that's in the result, and naming is hard, I told you. And when it does that, for right now, let's just to kind of get started, let's create an element that's I'll just make a div that has, and I'm just going to directly edit the HTML on it so that, you know, I mean, you're all experienced HTML people, so there's much better ways to be doing that. You're going to be using a framework in reality. You're not going to be just writing it raw, probably. And so here, let's just say that, like, you know, there's going to be an image. Well, let's just say stuff here. Okay, and let's make the text white. So this is going to be white, so it should show up on our black. And when we get that, we need to find our, I'm going to close the Python here and split this because we need our search results. Okay, so search results is going to be get ID search results. Okay, so this is this whole block here. So what we want to do is we're just going to add the child to that. So it's append child, right? Of the entry that we're making right now. It's not called div. Why am I calling it div? This is going to be the search cell itself. So let's say that this is the search cell. It is a div, but that doesn't mean that that's what we're referring to it as. And we're going to append the search cell here. Okay. So that's cool. Except we're not seeing anything, are we? Okay. So let me just, because I think we're not calling this function. Yeah, we're not calling this function. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick little function here because I'm not really concerned about X per se, but I do want to clear previous results. So basically when we fire off results, let's just clear all the entries that are there. And that way we don't have to get into reusing components and stuff. Okay, so we're going to find this thing and we're going to say the search results inner HTML is empty. So that's going to clear it. And then we're going to add the search cell. I'll just add the first one that came back, which is tucked away in X sub 0. So let's do that. Oops. And yeah, stuff here, stuff here. Okay, cool. So let's iterate through these. And we're going to do it our naughty way. We're just going to use a simple iterator. And this is less, you can use a, all right, fine, I will. I know, it's being naughty. Next up, for each. It is for each, right? For each, yeah, okay, cool. JavaScript. And so we're just gonna throw in add search cell and we should be all right. Is it just that simple? Yeah, there's our two. Okay, now minor layout glitch because, we want these to sort of take up their own space. So let's go and do that. Let's say that this search cell dot style dot width is going to be the size of one of these. So I know that my box art's 426, so we'll use 430 for that. And let's throw a height on there as well of so it's 240 is the size of the frame. So let's leave ourselves a little bit of space to put some text under it. All right, so we do that. Yeah, and we pushed off the other one, which is cool. Neat. So that's fine. I want these to stack sideways, so let's set our display to be an inline block. And that's not going to help us given the size of this because I think we're forcing it. Yeah, okay, so it's still here, but we're sort of forcing it down. So in between the two, I'm thinking just probably the hackiest way to do this is yeah, I mean, right now I'm just sort of appending the child on each one. Oh, sorry, I missed some chat here. Guy, you should follow the Primogen and get a keyboard cam. I want to see your digits move. Yeah, it is that type of keyboard, so it's something that'll look familiar too. So, but you can see all my keystrokes here. See, it's all terminal. All right, so we basically just need to get this thing to kind of show up over here. So great. Let's we're gonna, so here we're creating our element, and I'll get to the box art in a second, but I just returned that keyword. What do you mean? How could you return that keyword? It's like the greatest keyword. I mean, they have a nice newer version of it that's a little bit less buggy, but I definitely love that keyboard. Yeah. So, well, you know what? I'll worry about stacking this in a second. So it's going to be like a BR kind of thing. So this is not actually the text that I want to put. So let's just do a quick look at this data structure that's coming in. And I'm just going to throw that in here. So we're putting 2 entries on, and let's use the actual title instead of stuff here. So this is going to be result entry dot, it's not dot at all. It's going to be this thing, title. And because our data is perfect, we're never going to have to worry about a title not showing up. Okay, so this is video. Okay, so these things are showing up correctly. Okay, now let's put our entry in there. So right now I've got just a title. So let's go and add our image. And we'll get to our link in a second. So one way to get around this problem is a little bit naughty, and I'm not worried about that. So let's start mixing this thing in properly. So we're gonna go here and do that, and we're kind of good to go. So now it's wrapped in a div, and okay, cool. So in this thing, I'm not going to use a div. I'm going to use I'm going to put everything in a link, so it'll be like kind of like clickable sort of thing. And we're going to get to this in a moment, which is what we need to go into our player. Yeah, okay, so now we have some ugly styling. And we're going to put our image in here, which is a lot better than looking at our text. So this is going to be image source of basically this box art. Now this is not a proper URL, so we're gonna have to add on our CDN stuff. So I'm just gonna quickly say that this is the box art URL is well, we have to decide where we're going to return this. So I'm going to put these things in so here's our box art. It's all of these PNG files. I'm going to put these in the static directory so that we can just access them directly. This is exactly as it is checked in on source. So let's just take these this box art, push it to our CDN, and it shows up here. So basically, if I come here and I say, this, by the way, is no longer that. So this, so let's take like movie3 240p 0.png, and this needs a static in front of it. Okay, so we got the right box art URL. So the trick is we basically just need to take, relative to this site, because everything's on the same server right now, we just need to take static and then tack this thing on and then throw on the PNG. Okay, so great. Our box art URL is just going to be static, and we could set this to whatever if we had it on a CDN, an actual CDN. And the result of this result entry sub, was it box art? Box art. So we do that, and we see nothing. Oh, because I just put it on the variable. And we put it, we use the variable that we just created. Okay, now we start getting some imagery. Okay, and it's showing up in kind of the wrong spot. So this reminds me of that LaTeX beautiful typesetting. In case you hadn't seen this before. So yeah, UI, right? It's always fun. Okay, so yeah, let's now that our thing actually has a size, we're going to we can scale this down. So I can set this to be the width. So if I throw this, just if I put that, then it would do something a little bit different than, well, actually it would do nothing at all. Oh no, yeah, good. It's going to fit to the cell that it's in. So cool. And if I shrink this thing, so if we take this and we say that each cell is 200, yeah, okay, it's squashing it and it's fitting. So we have a size problem with our entry, was why it was pushing to the next line before. Okay, so this all right, we want to keep the same aspect. So we could throw it on here because we actually do know the dimensions of our box art. Our box art is 426 by 240 is the exact size that it is. So if that's going to be a little bit too, that's because I'm zoomed in here. So I'm just going to zoom back out. And we're going to give ourselves a little bit more real estate to work with because we're not even fitting two of these things right now. So, oh, and I just returned that key. Okay, no option key on the left hand. Yeah, that's a problem. I had to remap. Just do this so we can screenshot to the first emote. No, that's not going to be our first emote. Okay, that's the Primogen. Okay, so right, we need to let's change this. So we're going to let this go all the way for the size of our screen. Okay, we'll go give ourselves a little gutter. All right, and we'll go 95% of the way. And now when we do this, two of these fit nicely, and we've got URLs. All right, so of course we're clicking our URLs, but we're going to get to that in a moment. And hey, what's up, Akshay? How are you doing? Day's been good. Was a late night getting all the code into the repository, I'll tell you that, but you can all look at the edit history if you want. I'm working for you. Just keep that in mind. So this is neat. We have this here, and if I leave one of these off, it should calculate the aspect for me. No, that's not how that works. So, but I am going to shrink these. So let's say that 426 divided by 2. We could just chop. Let's make these like half size. So that, and this is 120, and yeah, it's a little too small. All right, so let's say 426 divided by, that would be the wrong way because we need to multiply if we're going to do the fraction. That's not a whole amount. So let's just say, let's call it 320. 320, and if I keep the same aspect, this was 426 by 240. 1.75, which is that thing. And I want this to be, that's not right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's do that. We're gonna just squish it a little bit. So this will be 35. Yeah, it's still too small, isn't it? All right. Well, let's call it like 400 and that, because it's UI. So we're not too worried about it. All right, great. Let me just return a slightly different, because this particular image is, they're both very close, so it's kind of hard to see which is which. Let's use 4. Yeah, okay, so now we have something that's like a little visually dissimilar. I'm gonna push these so that they're a little bit apart, and I'm gonna do that. Again, you would follow what your designer says. And if you're your designer, then do your design separately from doing your programming, because making it up on the fly, not a good move. Okay, so I'm gonna just basically push this by saying the margin left is 5 pixels. So if we do that, yeah, okay, that pushes it over just a little bit. And let's use that same box art for both, because it's kind of easy to see. Oh, actually, I'll take 6. I don't have that many titles. This thing, yeah, okay, we got a nice little tiny little gutter there, so we can push that a little bit more. Yeah, okay, so we got a little bit of space. Neat. All right, so let's clean up and get rid of our debugging. Actually, there's one more thing that I need from this, which is the actual movie, which is going to be here in the media tag. So let's go and wire that up. So we're going to say the media URL is going to be, what did we call our player? Play. Okay, so it's going to be /play, and let's just plop the name of the file in there. I actually think I already I already added it. It's, well, this would be how to get the file, but we'll just we'll add to our player, and we'll just do it in JavaScript because it's probably easier. So we'll do that, which is going to take result entry of media, and media URL is going to go into here. So this is our media. That's our media URL. All right, cool. So we get our search result, and now we get a not found. Okay, and that's because play now needs to accept a parameter. So do we want to process? If we want to just pass that through Python, I'm just going to add it as a query with no, it'll be a query parameter with no variable. So we could just grab it directly. So in this case, all we really need to do is just change this to that. And normally you would bind your variable to something, but we're not really worried about that. So we're going to open this link. Yeah, okay, so it's here, now it's available here. And again, because Sunny is Sunny and she was helpful, we're going to encode it just in case there's a space, but I already know that none of those actually have spaces. So if I go and reload this, then yeah, okay, so it's still exactly the same. Okay, cool. Wow, that's our search blank. So the only thing we need to do is when we go and do this, we can move around, and actually let's use our controller here because we took the time to wire it up anyway, and we can say search for GTR, part of Spartan Grader. Okay, and you'll notice that we're getting search results on every one of these, and it's clearing it. Now, it looks nearly instantaneous because it's running on the same system, but we'll get to the real internet in the future. All right, so that's all we need to do is make our player work, and we're pretty much good to go. So let's get that. We have our box art, we have our beautiful typesetting, and we need our player. Okay, so I'm gonna do 2 different looking episodes. So I have 5 and 4. Let's do like 3. Okay, cool. If we play one of these, now these 2 links should be different. So if I'm looking down here at my link text, okay, it's just tacking it on the end of the play without a variable name because we're naughty. And then I just need to process it in the actual player, which is still referred to as home. So in here, how can I get this in JavaScript? Well, this thing plays. So we left this code from sort of last time. Let me, we're going to work in the player. So let's just work directly in the player for the moment. Fetch and play is basically what we want to do. So here we have a selected movie that it's just tacking onto that CDN, and that's what it's going to go, and it builds that URL, and then it fetches it and it plays it. And play is the new routine, which pretty much just uses the old routines, but all it does is it just decodes this concatenated format. So basically, if I give this thing the right data, we're good to go. So this play here really just needs this URL to be right. And then it's going to go fetch it and do all the other work for us. So let's give it the right URL. Right now it's being hard coded. So I can get that off window.location. So I'm just going to take it directly. And if I look at window location, it has a search parameter, which currently is set to nothing because I'm not searching for anything. But if I say thing, then I look at this value and it's thing, it has that in there. So I can use that as my deep link kind of criteria. Okay, so in this player, let's take what I just showed you down there, that window.location.search, and let's just take, let's use slice again and use everything after character 1. We're going to assume that it's always there because there's no errors, and we're not worried about errors, are we? Again, that's the kind of thing, like if you're building a real one, you'd have to deal with all these different error cases. So it's basically just from here. Can I just slice from one bound? I think the second one's optional, right? Yeah, okay, cool. So that'll just take to the rest of the string, and that is basically all I need. So I'm going to say that the selected movie file is now this thing, and that's it. I mean, I can say, like, if that's, we could be defensive here and we can check that actually it is there, but we'll worry about that in a moment. Let's just update our player first with a proper URL. So I'm on this thing and I open this up, and now it's got this. So
We're going to talk about, well, compression really falls into two major
okay, the problem is that that's the one that I just that's the one that was there before. So if it was movie 4, yeah. Okay, so that's it. It works. So all we need to do now is just actually it's done. It couldn't be that simple.
We're going to talk about, well, compression really falls into two.
That was compression, and this is coffee cup appropriate.
And because we're doing video encoding, I thought I'd be coffee cup appropriate today.
Yeah.
Just saying. Okay, so
Bob's your uncle. So that's it. I mean, all we need to do now is we just would have to wire up to move down to that row. But basically, the box art that's going to come back, I mean, we could actually... I feel like that went fast enough that we should just, like, do a real search. I mean, you know, we could at least do, like, a index of kind of search. Like, is at least the search term in the entry and then return that. Now, obviously, our thing is going to be kind of a little bit funny if it returns more than 2 results. So the simple answer, which I think for today, is we just return 2 results. So that, I'm really surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, that just worked. Yeah, I mean, that just did exactly what it's supposed to do. Okay, so, right. Now, we're going to finish binding that to the controller, we're going to need to add a little state to it to allow us to move up and down. And that's, you know, that's pretty straightforward from what we've been doing so far. But the other part is, like, if we actually want to, you know, build up some real search results, which is kind of what I was doing here. So right now we're just always returning the same 2. We could actually just kind of rip through the catalog real quick, which in the event that, oops, let me just see where I am. I'm in here, I'm in this directory. So we're gonna go here and look at the catalog, and I've got this synopsis field, which should be a pretty decent candidate for searching. We could also use the title data in the event, you know, I mean, this is probably most of what a user is looking for, but if they're being topical, they're going to be searching on synopsis. So since most of my they all come from the same show, and I don't want to get into stop words because this will be a stop word since it's in every entry, then I'm just going to use the synopsis for today. But, you know, this is definitely something maybe as an extra session or off stream or a Wednesday night or something. I'll plug that into like a proper free text search system. Now, what you'd want to do in a real product is you'd want to look at what your users are searching for and give them that. So if you notice that one way to figure out what the proper answer is, you know, a heuristic that you could use is you could say, okay, every time they search for this, they play this movie. So that's one way to data process and kind of like properly fix your search results to say like, okay, this is probably the correct title to select given that search input, which is a slightly different answer than like this is exactly what they were looking for, because our catalog is very limited, as we can see here. So reminds me of another service that I used to work at years ago that didn't have a huge catalog back then, because catalog costs a lot of money when you're licensing it. Okay, so right, so let's just use synopsis as our, and we're just gonna do a simple search. So I'm gonna say that catalog, so let's say, so catalog is structured as a key value entry. So it really comes with a title ID is the key, and the value is that data structure. So that's the, we'll call that the meta. All right, so if we do that, if we say for this thing in catalog, and right now I'm just gonna, yeah, I didn't crash my server. then this is, I'm going to try not to use a comprehension. I would use a comprehension if I was just doing this on my own. But, so this is, let's just see what we're getting back here, which is, so title ID should always be a string, and let's just drop the meta. Okay, so if I come here and I run a search, I get too many values to unpack. So, oh, because this is a, it's a dictionary. So, yeah, okay, so since it's a dictionary, I need to go, okay, this is the key and this is the value. So if I'm going to use just the synopsis, then really I'm just looking at meta sub synopsis. So in movie 2, we have video is just to set up pictures. Okay, so here's the synopses for all of these. And for our search, we're going to use a really simple if it's there kind of search. So if I have a string like this, then we're going to say, where is that? Is that here? Find me the word coffee. Okay, it exists, but if I misspelled it, like, then I'm going to get a -1. Okay, so we're going to return every title that has a an entry that's not -1. This works pretty much the same way as index of. So if the meta, I'm not using a regular expression to those of you who are around that know about that, but if we do meta synopsis of a, it's so nice when you know there's always a synopsis. The find of whatever the term is that was sent in. So in our case, it was the search query, except I don't want to quote it. Search query. Then if that thing is not -1, or I could say if it's greater than or equal to 0, it's probably more Pythonic. Then, actually this whole segment's not very Pythonic, so I can append it. So I'll just append the, not the title, but I'll just append the meta. And then that'll give me back this thing, which I can comment out. And it's not limited, so I could just limit this to the first 2 results. This is the last entry, it doesn't count. Okay, so I crash my server in the middle, that's cool. So I do this. Oh, yeah, nothing has that. Okay, so if I do, all right, let's see what we're getting back here now. Okay, so it has a space that appeared on the end, which is kind of fun. Yeah, it can't delete that last space, so we're gonna have to deal with that in a moment. But let's just say that this is like C, this is like F. Yeah, that's because from earlier on I was actually manually adding that space on because I wanted to see how it got encoded. So let me get rid of that. So I'm gonna back out that little nuance, which was, let's see, where was that? So that was in the search routine. No, it was actually doing the search. They called it, yeah, do search. Okay, so here I'm manually adding in that space, which is why it's not really gonna work that well. Funny thing, there's a UI that does that I'm not gonna name right now, but let's just say that that's a real problem if you're not careful with it. So yeah, if I come here and I say EF, okay, there's nothing that has EF, but I can go and delete that, and I can say, but my example before had the word coffee. Look at that, single search result. Hey, not bad. All right, we have a nice little simple search. See, it's nice when it's all like kind of opaque up at the server to the client, because the server team can run along and build a really good search, and the client team can go along and build a really good UI, and they could both like have a nice separation there of concerns. So yeah, let's let me just what now. Normally you play with that visited entry, but can we do that directly on the not using the pseudo tag, the a colon whatever. Actually, you know what? I can just change it globally. Yeah, let's just make our link tag, because we're not worried about that. And because this is gonna upset Fafi, because I'm putting it. This should really be in a separate file too. So, yeah, it's was it visited? Let's do. You're gonna be red. And yes, Fafi. Okay, so if we've gone to one of these, oh, right. Yeah, see, it's not keeping it. Let's not worry about the colors. Okay. If somebody in chat wants to give me a decent style to give it, go ahead. So, right. Where we got this thing, and we're ignoring the mouse input, which is good for a controller. We got this thing to basically work with our key input, and that is kind of neat, because this actually has been wired up to a real search. Now, it's also case issues. Oh, actually, there's the term guy is not in any title. All right, so let's try out RLE here. That's a nice example. Let's see if we get the right thing. So this was the run length encoding and compression. Yeah, we got it in 2 keystrokes. RLE and create. There you go. RLE and crazy stuff. Nice. All right. Okay, so the only other thing we need to do is not click. So we have to go down. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, UI is always, it's difficult to get stuff done. That's why it's really nice to reuse like framework code that handles this stuff for you. But so what we need to do now is we have our left and right is sort of bound, assuming that we're always on this search row. But if I press down, we're going to enter this area. And I'm just going to change the background color as sort of like which one is selected. So let's try doing that. So let's start off with the key entry. So I'm going to need to start with, oh, and by the way, I don't need the search results anymore, do I? Yeah, let's get rid of that, and let's get rid of this, and let's get rid of this. Okay, so all right, let's quiet our log up a bit. Okay, so now that's the last one, I think. Yeah, okay, so that is my, yeah, cool. So got a nice quiet log. So what do we get when we actually press down? I think we're just going to get an arrow down. Oh, of course I'm not. I literally just unbound it. All right, so I press it down, I press up, I get down and up. Okay, so let's use event key is. So now we're making left and right modal. So they're now related to whether or not you're on the search is going to change what they do. So for now, I'm just going to throw that into global is kind of how I'm going to get around it. But we're going to need to handle up, and we're going to need to handle, let me just copy this. We're going to need to handle down. So if we just say that this is down pressed and this is up pressed, then we should see the right things, except I added a syntax error when I did that little edit because there's an if, right? It just needs to be part of the same statement. So yeah, let's just see what the browser says. Yeah, okay, we got a run open. Yeah, I don't know how I deleted that. So, yeah, cool. Press down, down's pressed, press up, up's pressed. Okay, so we need to add another kind of mode, which is going to be whether we're searching or whether we're on that row. So because we're just using global state at the moment, I'm just going to say that this is the on search results, and I'm going to set it to false because we start off with in the search blank, which is kind of indicated by that red thing. Okay, so this yeah, our treatment today isn't about doing a really good UI. It's about getting ourselves in the right headspace for sort of an LRUD, TV type interface. So that we're going to need to improve, but I think that's a separate hack session. So, okay. What we're going to do with this up and down is we're going to use it to basically say, I'm not going to allow multiple rows at the moment. Nice simplification. You like that? Instead, I'm going to say, if you press up, then on search results is always going to be false. And if it's down, then on search results is going to be true. Now I can use that information. So I'll just process those two, and I'm going to break these into a separate block. So now we can say all of this stuff that I'm going to, actually, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this thing. So all of these search results, this was related to the key handling when I'm dealing with the typing input, but it's not related to the search results handling. So what I need to do here is say, like, if I'm on search results and that's false, then all of this stuff applies. And I'm just going to go like that to keep things simple. Otherwise, and that just, otherwise we're in an invalid state if there's any other case. But I'm going to say move on searches. Okay, so here we're sort of doing that, and then we move down. So we're on searches, we move left and right, and it doesn't move anything on our bar. We move back up, and we move left and right, and it works again. Now, we probably need a visual indicator to say, like, oh yeah, you're no longer on there anymore. But that's really about making a better UI as opposed to, like, we're focusing more on functionality right now. Okay, so let's do that. By the way, chat, let me know if you're having questions, because we're getting pretty close to wrapping up here, so I want to probably take a few questions at the end if people are wondering about things. So let's while we're here, basically we just need to handle left and right. So we're going to take this chunk, and this is about swapping to the next key letter. but we're going to worry about swapping to the next search entry. Actually, you know what? I'm going to worry about, you know what? Let's just do, so we need to kind of say which one we're on, which is let the search cell selected, and I'm gonna make this like a 0, you know, a 0, 1, 2 kind of thing, because I don't want to put too much about like the state in the in this part of the system. So what we're gonna do is basically say get the child of this whole search results div, which is this thing. So I'm gonna just take this and I'm gonna say like, okay, so let's just, I mean, you don't need to grab this every time. I'm just gonna trying to keep it clear what's happening here. So so with this search results, this is going to be how we scroll, but we can basically just say if so if it's arrow left, I'm basically subtracting 1. So I'm saying search, what did I just call that? I called it search cell selected. Okay, so search cell selected gets +1, and again I'd have to just say like, you know, if search cell selected is greater than 0, then we'll be a little more safe than do that. And okay, so search results, and then I just basically need to actually I don't need to do that in here at all. I can just say set search cell selected of whatever the current one is, and I don't need to put all that into global state. Okay, so, and that's basically going to need this routine, which is to say search cell selected, which one, which index, okay, and we need this entry, and we basically are going to need to do some stuff. Move to this thing. Okay, and that's cool. And this one, I can actually just do that because both of them are going to need to do the same thing. So this one is pretty much the same thing, but first of all, we're adding to it, and we have to say if you're less than however many. So this one actually does need to know how many search cells are there, which we get by basically this. So I'm going to use the DOM as my storage. For now, I'm just going to dump out this node, because when it's populated, I think I can just do the get children on it, but I just want to make sure we're sort of in the right place. So if I do this and I go down, okay, so I'm on 0. I move this. If I try to move to the right, then yeah, I've got these 2 children. So I'm just going to stick this here real quick, and it's temp1.children, which is the 2 divs, and then I can say the length of that array is 2. Okay, so, and sorry that cuts off there, but that's basically what I did there. So we can take this search results and we can say how many is equal to search results dot children dot length. That's how many there are. So if there's, this is 2, it's counting 1, 2, not counting from 0. And as long as search cell selected is less than basically how many, and there's bumping off by one issue there, then we're okay. Yep, there's an off by one there. So we could just say if this is search cell selected is, oh. Didn't see anything, did we, huh? No. Okay. Oh, hey, what's up, dumb little bunny? How are you doing? Thanks for coming by. Oh, and GPPK, thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. So great. That index is now basically right. So now we just basically need to say, yeah, light it up, you know, which is this set search cell selected, move to 1. All right. So we don't need to do this anymore. And this is what we need to light up. So we should basically say search results dot children sub which index, and we're going to be unsafe, so we get a nice crash in the event of trouble. Dot style dot background color is gray, and let's try that out. Oh, right, can't do that. So you don't want to go down before that. So we're gonna have to block going down if there's no results. Okay. So move on. Searches. Okay, so this is getting invoked. But engage. Hey, Alt F4, engage. Yes. Enhance. No. Yeah, let's okay, so let's see just real quick. What is going on with you? So style, background color. So there's not enough space there. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna wipe it out just to make sure that we're hitting the right entry. And HTML is gonna get stuff. Okay, so we do this, we do search, we go down, we move. Okay, so it's not wiping it out. So this doesn't look right. Oh, just stopping by to say hi. Really busy today, but wanted to drop by. Oh, okay. Well, what's up, Alt F4? Well, we're really close to the fun part. We're about to have our UI go into playback. So, yeah, we just got a little issue here that it's not returning the right entry. So let me just look at what it is returning, which is, so let's say selected cell is this thing. And let's say that selected cell of this thing, let's just dump out what that is. Okay, and this is, yeah, no, okay, it is choosing the right one. That's odd. So, yeah, we're getting it, but this line seems to be no good. Yeah, because this is here, and if I press to the right, this is here. Okay. And it's not blowing away the contents of that thing. Oh, damn it, guy. Yeah, okay. That's what that's supposed to do. Okay, so right. Let's okay, so in this structure, we just have a okay, so we'll leave that for the moment. So in this structure, oh, now we'll wipe it out. In this structure, that's this div is mostly wiped out by this image. Yeah, because you can't see it. If I throw a little border on it or something, that might be the easiest way to do this, just to show what's selected. So if I store this, let's check real quick rather than guess. So let's take the style and the border color set to white, and the border width set to 2 pixels, and the border what am I missing here? Oh, style, right? Set to okay, so we're gonna do that, which is to say, let's take our selected cell, let's do our style, and I think we can just spell all of these out at once, right? Does it let you do that on the border? Okay, so I can just say like 2 pixels, solid white, solid red. Okay, yeah, that does work. So I can say this thing border is 2 pixels, solid red. Nice. Okay, so the only thing I need to do is clean up after where I've been, to say the last one, before you move, undo this. So here I'm actually changing which one is selected, so that's actually the last place where I know that it is. So I'm just gonna pass that along and say last selected search cell is whatever search cell selected is. And then what we can do is we can just say like so. And which index? Old index. I'll call it last index. Okay. So last index, so basically this one we go and we do that. We're going to say last cell is going to get last index, and all we need to do is just basically undo this. So last cell gets, we don't need this debugging anymore, or we don't need to wipe out the HTML, but this thing will get, what can I say? Nothing. Oops. that hey, so now all we need to do is just flip into playback, which down here is unbound. So I'm just going to use B because now this doesn't apply to everything. So I'm going to move this to here and here. And I'm just going to say event dot key is B, then we just need to go into the link, which is helpfully right under us. So it's, we'll say play search cell, and let's just pass in the search cell that's selected. Okay, so we just need that, which is this thing, and the search cell that's selected is an index, so we need to basically do the same thing that we were doing before. So this is the cell, and we're just going to say that this is search cell selected, and let's just dump that out real quick. Cell, let's take a quick look at it. I think we can just grab the A tag. Oh, when I move on to it, you know what, the easy way to do that is just always do it, because we don't care. So that's funny, the audio is not working. I don't know what I said there. So if we do this and we search, okay, so that's right. Now we have a nice little pixel bug, but yeah, that's a separate topic. Then if we play, then it's going to show us this is the one that's selected, and here's the href. So I'm going to do that up here so that you can kind of see it. I got too much, there's kind of too much debugging there, so let me move on. Okay, so right, so we go down and we hit play, and this thing, moving out of the way here, this thing is basically our target. So let's just grab that. So we store that as a variable. It's called temp1, and temp1 dot children, and it's always going to be the first entry, which is this thing, and that thing attribute is that, so I can just say window.location gets this stuff. All right. I mean, if you're building a single page app, you would just put the player in here, but you know, let's keep it simple for today. Okay, so what we have is the cell, and what we need to do is to basically just change location based on this cell. So it's not cell, it's cell.children 0.get attribute. I'll clean this up later off show because I don't think anyone wants to watch that, because more JavaScript. Okay, so that thing, and if we look down here, we get that's our playback URL. So all we need to do is I can just do that directly, right?
So Pixel is basically just a it's basically just a set of pictures.
Video's basically a
if
set
you
of pictures.
play these pictures fast enough, so this is
We are playing them fast enough. Look at this. Now, that wasn't really that cool because we got to do it with the controller. Let's search for coffee. Oh, there it is. Let's do this. Now our player now has an issue because it will need a...
And because we're doing video encoding,
Player,
I thought
but
I'd be
anyway,
coffee cup.
that's
appropriate
player is a whole separate UI element. So I feel pretty good about this. In reality, we wouldn't deep link into a separate page. I think we would just take this code and bring it over to this app as soon as we listen to Fafi and we put it into a proper JavaScript file that we can import. And then we could just play it directly on the other screen. So we don't even, we can start single paging this right there. But this is really cool. Oh, Fafi, you missed that earlier, but the bottom video is, let me just, that's basically like, so if I start typing in here, and I play this
audio, on the other hand, is a little bit different. So we can't
this
really
is the
see
delta
audio, but
between
we can
frames.
imagine it sort of like a...
So you'll notice this is where the picture's changing.
This looks like, but,
so that's actually the change from the frame before that.
This is sort of like looking at a series of pulses.
When you put it back together,
and
like this is
if these pulses are played, even though there's like little...
That's it, everybody. We got an LRUD. We are good to go. So this is a very basic LRUD UI. There's piles of cleanup we can do. We can deal with bugs. We can work on minimizing keystrokes. We can add in metrics, which is really what I would do. Because you really want to know how you're doing. But this is a functional LRUD linear search keyboard. So this literally, like, I can move on this and I can type things in, like, say for example, I wanted to search for Fafi. That Y is far away. Then that works. Now I have no search result here, but and so I would probably want to block being able to move down at the moment. But this is pretty damn cool. I'm psyched. That's awesome. We have a UI, and it actually plays. So sweet. We would add in like some glitz around like animations. We'd want like a nice slide effect. We'd want to make sure that the cursor is always moving. We'd probably eliminate this red as well, just so that there's only one marker, which is where you are. You don't want to break that. See, this sort of breaks that paradigm with the user, because when I actually search for something, like here, when I'm like looking for something, then when I move down, I've got my nice red outline, but I've also got this red selected entry, which is confusing. So now the user's a little bit lost about whether they're here or they're here. So you really have to pay attention to that. That's why it's so important to stay in the right headspace, like use a controller. Don't use your keyboard, don't use your mouse, because you'll discover that you got some things that are impossible movements. CCVE, that's that you should tune into the first part of the show for that, for the answer to that. But how do you use the controller? It's actually, my answer is checked in. So you can, this actually utilizes, well, here I just lowercase the stuff. But if we actually go to this file, this is the way to use the keyboard. It's stuck in my diff, which is not really what I want. So if I look over in remote control and the DS4 handler, this is basically the code from episode 2 of the show, where I showed you how to build your own DIY Stream Deck. I applied it to using a DualShock 4 controller. So these are the DualShock 4 button layouts corresponding to cross, circle, square, live in your world, play in ours. I don't know if you're allowed to say that. But anyway, so yeah, these are the key codes that come in, and the way that all that works, you can watch episode 2. But it is all there. It's available for you. And just so that you all have a copy of it, I'll just link the tree. Well, you know, since we're talking about the controller, I'll link this right now. But I'll put this in the chat for all of you. So Akshay asks, did you have to configure the controller to work with the UI? Absolutely. That was earlier in the show. Basically what I did is on the controller, I read it using that piece of code that you saw, and I turn it into regular key maps. So like, for example, I map up to a normal up. And actually here, let me go into one of these files where that makes sense. So if I press down, down. If I press up, left, right. And I mapped these buttons to their equivalents on a different controller that I won't name. And yes, I am a PS4 guy. And CSGF, thank you. Ooh, nice. Yeah, thought you'd like that. It's a little more. If you want to get into TV headspace, you gotta have a controller of some sort. I mean, you know, it's fine if you're using like an IR controller or whatever, but yeah, it totally is. That's actually, this is running over here. This is that code. I mapped additional keys. So for example, the shoulder buttons, I have them here, but they're not bound to any action. So for example, if I press in the triggers, I unmapped the analog sticks because the analog sticks generate a lot of data. This is mapped to a mouse. So that's my touchpad. That's handled by Linux. I didn't write anything specific for that. And I didn't do anything with the PSN button, or if you press this, you know, any of this other stuff. This does have, you can guess which controller that's from, but I mapped those to normal keys using this program. And then in JavaScript, I just added an event listener for key down. And that's basically how I'm controlling it. Yeah, it's really about like building the UI. And Robotyrian, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. So I think this is a pretty good spot to wrap up. So this obviously we can do a better job with our UI. I will probably take the liberty of cleaning some of this code up when I check it in. Or maybe I'll just check it in as is, and then, you know, in a future, maybe like a Wednesday night or something, we'll play around with building different UIs. It's really kind of fun when you get to this point, because you get to start messing around with user interaction and saying like, does this feel better? Is that too hard to do on a controller? Whatever. Ultimately, I'd say the best version of this, for those of you who haven't seen it, I have a link here on blog of some guy. This is a blog. I haven't written much on here because I've been mostly doing video stuff lately. But this actually, I have all the postmortems for my hacks over at Netflix. And this is one of my favorite UI innovations that I ever did. And what this is this is a real telegraph key, like legit telegraph key. I debounced the input. I hooked it up to a Raspberry Pi. I used the same kind of stuff to decode, except there's a Morse code table. I worked on this with a few other people too. And then we plugged this in. I turned that into real keyboard scan codes. And I inject those into the PS4, onto a retail PS4. And we did this on stage. There's me typing Morse. This is the UI. Alex did a lot of the work on this UI, but and this is literally a Morse code interface to just search. You can do it with single button. So that's kind of fun. So, you know, if you ever think like there's not enough buttons on this controller, you can do it with one button. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. If you're all interested in that, I can bring out, we can play with telegraph keys at some point in the future. So what are the other things that I would improve? So obviously this is painful in a linear setup. So like I said, I would move this to being a box. So that would minimize the number of keystrokes. Same story here with the search results. We could do a lot more than 2 results. We could do like, 8 results. We could shrink the box art. We could make the box art smaller and then blow it up as you selected, and then, so that you could see more. That's kind of like the wonder of UI. The real magic to that is to figure out, don't ask your user what they think of it. Look at the data. Like, collect some data about how they're interacting with this UI. So for example, I could count the number of keystrokes that it took me in order to play back a video. I could look at how long it took for this screen to come up. I could look at how long the search results took to come back. Analyze that data and you'll build a spectacular UI, because from there, that's what people are really doing with it, not what you think they're going to do with it. You might realize, like, this is too close, so people are getting lost. I mean, eye tracking could tell you that. So we did use the search keywords. I was going to do that as a reach goal. We ended up using it from the synopsis. We can add the subtitle text. Again, we'd have to build like a good search. So that's a whole other segment, would be like doing a proper like search engine, whatever, inverted index, tries, all the other stuff that goes with searches, knowing good results, biasing to that. And that's actually kind of like eventual plays is one of my favorite ways of looking at that, which is for things that they're searching for, what do they end up playing? And you can use that to sort of train a neural network around your search results. So you can get like pretty sophisticated with that. Obviously, the even better thing to do is to realize that this has a microphone. There's sound on this. So we could actually capture and build a voice search engine with no buttons. So I think that the ultimate UI is going to be formless. It's going to be when we get speech right. But there's different opinions on that. And I will say no more. So those are just a few areas where I think we could do a significantly better job. But this is pretty good for like one, couple hour work session. So I'm very happy with this. I think we'll do some of that maybe in other shows if people are interested. Voice recognition is I'm very interested in that field in general. So that's something we could play around with. Get the code, play with it. This is written for Linux, so you got to be doing it with a Linux box. But I could do it with DS4 for all. DS for all on Windows, and we could do something in like C# or Rust for the Primeagen, because he loves when things are in Rust. That's his favorite language, I think. Maybe we'll let him code that up. So yeah, there's metrics, there's all sorts of areas of innovation, and ultimately let the data guide you on what the best UI is. I mean, you can have theories about it and you can design it, but ultimately like prove it, show that you've got a better UI. And this is a great limited example where it's tough because there's such limited inputs. So it's really about maximizing that experience. Put yourself on a couch, sit on a couch, use this controller and say, does this feel good? And that's how you're really going to build the best UIs. That's some of the best advice I got when I joined the former company. So without further ado, for those of you interested, that was the UI segment. That's episode 4. I'm going to go on to the real internet next time, and I'm going to show you this massive project that I worked on, open sourced, and we're going to be able to teleport anywhere in the world, and that's going to be a hell of a show. So we're going to get to that next time, and we're going to check out what it's like to use the internet from wherever, especially now that we have a real custom video codec, all of which is checked in so you can observe all the code. Thank you. Follow, like, do all the things. You can check out, I've been uploading everything to YouTube, so I'll get this episode up there, and join the Discord if you want to come and talk, or if you have questions, or you thought that was cool, or you're having an issue getting the controller code to work and you want to just chat with some other cool programmers. So do all that. And Akshay, thank you. And CCV, cool. Yeah, I'll see you all around. So everyone, take care. I will be doing the next segment on Real Internet next Friday, but I will be doing Learn on Monday with Jessie and possibly Tian, although I think she's feeling a little under the weather. So anyway, Monday should be the next stream, and I hope to see you all soon. So take care.